My family ditched me for my sister's boyfriend on the trip I paid for, acting like I didn't even matter. So, guess what kind of karma hit them the moment I walked away? I poured my heart, my soul, and $15,000 into what I thought would be the ultimate family vacation, a dream trip to Hawaii. I truly believed this would finally buy me the love and respect I'd always craved. Instead, it became the brutal moment I realized my own family would replace me in an instant and then use my money to do it. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, our family wasn't wealthy. My parents, Harold and Diana, worked hard, and from the outside, we probably looked like the perfect American family. But under the surface, things were complicated. I learned early that my role was the responsible older brother. While my younger sister, Brianna, got dance classes and sleepovers, I was expected to maintain perfect grades and set the example. I loved Brianna deeply. She had this infectious laugh and creative spirit, but it was hard not to notice the double standards. My parents would tell relatives I was so mature for my age, which really meant I was supposed to be the adult, when they couldn't or wouldn't be. By 16, I was working part-time, getting straight A's. Brianna, meanwhile, struggled with her grades, but Mom would just say, "She's just finding her way." Me? When I got my first B+ in advanced calculus, Dad sat me down for a serious talk about living up to my potential. Despite this imbalance, I desperately craved their approval. So, when Brianna decided on an expensive arts college, I, having just landed my first software engineering job after graduating, on scholarships, contributed $200 a month to her tuition for 4 years. It was a huge chunk of my entry-level salary, but the pride in my parents' eyes made it feel worthwhile. Later, when Dad lost his job and Mom cut her hours to care for Grandma, I stepped in again, sending $500 home monthly for nearly a year. They thanked me, sure, but it always felt like an expectation, like I was just fulfilling my role as the responsible son. At 25, I got an incredible offer from a major tech company in Seattle. My salary more than doubled. For the first time, I had real financial freedom. But moving across the country, I worried about losing my place. So, I became even more generous. Flights home 5 times a year. Thoughtful gifts, never missing our Sunday video calls. I paid for a new roof when a storm hit, and even paid off the remainder of Brianna's student loans as a graduation gift. Each time they expressed gratitude, but it never changed the fundamental dynamic. Brianna remained the emotional center, and I was valued primarily for what I could provide. My personal life in Seattle was comfortable, but lonely. Dating was a struggle. My coworker, Rachel, once hit me with a truth bomb. "Marcus, you're trying to buy your family's love when what you really want can't be purchased." I dismissed it, but her words stuck. Last January, turning 29, I realized it had been years since we'd all spent quality time together. That's when the Hawaiian vacation idea sparked. I envisioned mornings on the beach, adventurous excursions, long dinners filled with laughter. This trip, I thought, would be different. An experience, a chance to rebuild our bonds, create lasting memories. Little did I know, this generous gesture would reveal just how disposable I truly was. I threw myself into planning like a complex coding project. Weekends spent comparing resorts, reading reviews, creating spreadsheets of activities. It had to be perfect. I settled on a luxury resort on Maui's western shore. 3 infinity pools, 6 restaurants, oceanfront suites. At $400 a night per room, it was extravagant, but I wanted to spare no expense. I booked 2 suites for 10 days in June. When I called my parents, Mom shrieked with delight. "Hawaii? Oh, Marcus, we've always wanted to go." Dad's reaction was more subdued, but equally appreciative. "That's incredibly generous, son." I assured them everything was covered. Flights, accommodation, food, activities. Just pack swimsuits. 2 days later, Brianna called, bubbling with excitement. "Mom told me about Hawaii. You're the best brother ever." Her enthusiasm warmed my heart. This was it. This was the reaction I'd hoped for. Then came the request that changed everything. "So, I've been seeing this amazing guy, Jake, for about 3 months now. Would it be okay if he joined us? You'll absolutely love him." I hesitated. This was a family trip. I hadn't budgeted for an extra person, someone I hadn't even met. But Brianna's pleading, as it always did, wore me down. Please, Marcus, it would mean so much. Mom and Dad have already met him and think he's great. Unable to deny her, I agreed. Sure, Bri, if he's important to you. I immediately upgraded her room and booked another flight. The additional costs brought the total to $15,000. As departure neared, my excitement grew. New vacation clothes, Hawaiian guides, even practicing phrases. At work, I cleared my schedule. My boss looked concerned when I requested 2 full weeks off. You deserve this break, my coworker Trevor told me. Just promise me you'll actually relax. The night before, I meticulously packed thoughtful gifts, a designer sundress for Mom, high-end golf accessories for Dad, an expensive camera for Brianna. For Jake, a gift card to the resort spa. I wanted to make a good first impression. At Chicago O'Hare, my family was already waiting. Mom waving, Dad smiling, Brianna bouncing. And then I saw him, tall, tanned, arm draped casually around my sister's shoulders. Jake, with his perfectly styled hair, designer sunglasses, and confident smile, looked like he'd walked straight out of a men's fashion magazine. My parents beamed at him, already comfortable. Great to finally meet you, man, Jake said, offering a firm handshake. Brianna's told me so much about her successful big brother. Thanks for including me on this awesome trip. I've been to Hawaii 3 times, so I can show you all the best spots. Something about his tone felt slightly condescending, but I pushed it aside. He was Brianna's boyfriend. I was determined to like him. During the 6-hour flight, the first subtle signs appeared. My parents, across the aisle, kept leaning over, engaging Jake in conversation. They laughed at his jokes, asked about his previous Hawaiian adventures, genuinely fascinated by his stories about pharmaceutical sales. Meanwhile, when I tried to share details about the exciting activities I'd planned, my mother patted my hand. That's nice, dear. We'll look at the itinerary later. At the resort, the breathtaking beauty momentarily erased my discomfort. Open-air lobby, stunning ocean views, flower lays, tropical drinks. Checking in, I felt a surge of pride seeing their odd expressions. Welcome to paradise, the receptionist said, handing over our keys. Mr. Wilson has arranged everything for your stay. In that moment, watching my family marvel at the luxury, I felt certain the next 10 days would be everything I dreamed of. I couldn't have been more wrong. The next morning, I woke up refreshed, excited for our first full day. I'd booked breakfast at the oceanfront restaurant for 8:30. My alarm went off at 7:45. Quick shower, then to my parents' suite. Door open. Empty. Brianna and Jake's room? Empty. Slightly confused, I headed to the restaurant. Sure enough, there they were, already seated at a prime ocean view table, plates piled high for empty coffee cups. There you are, Mom said when she spotted me. We didn't want to wake you. You seem so tired from organizing everything. Dad added, proudly, we've been up since 6 o'clock. Jake suggested we catch the sunrise on the beach. It was spectacular. Jake nodded, mouth full of pineapple. Nothing like a Hawaiian sunrise, bro. You missed out. I forced a smile, taking the remaining seat, trying to ignore the sting of being left out. The breakfast reservation was for 8:30, I mentioned lightly. I was up in time. Oh, we were starving after the beach, Brianna explained, missing my disappointment entirely. Jake said this place starts serving at 7 o'clock, so we just came early. I nodded, ordered coffee. Don't overreact, I told myself. It's just breakfast. The day's main event was still to come, a snorkeling excursion I'd booked months ago to Molokini, a volcanic crater teeming with tropical fish. As we boarded the catamaran, my spirits lifted. Perfect skies, gentle breeze, water so turquoise it seemed unreal. I'd chosen this tour because it included certified marine biologists and a gourmet lunch. While we sailed, Jake dominated the conversation. Last time I was in Hawaii, I swam with sharks off the North Shore. He proclaimed, no cage, just me and a 12-foot tiger shark eye to eye. I knew tiger sharks rarely came close to shore, and such an encounter without safety measures would be insane. But my family hung on his every word, gasping. When I tried to share some facts about Molokini's ecosystem, Dad cut me off mid-sentence. Jake was telling us about the time he helped rescue a tourist caught in a rip current. He said, turning back to my sister's boyfriend. During the actual snorkeling, I found myself alone. Mom and Dad paired up, Brianna and Jake swam together. The marine biologist guide noticed me by myself and kindly showed me a sea turtle, which briefly lifted my spirits. That evening, I'd booked reservations at the resort's most exclusive restaurant. I'd specifically requested a round table with an unobstructed ocean view to celebrate our first full day. When we arrived, the hostess led us to a rectangular table. Before I could speak, Jake stepped forward. "Excuse me, we prefer that table by the window," he said, pointing to a newly vacated, better position one. To my surprise, the hostess immediately accommodated him with a friendly smile. "Of course, sir. Right this way." We were seated, and I found myself at the far end of the rectangular table, with Jake positioned at the head, my parents on either side of him, Brianna next to Mom. From my seat, I could barely see the sunset I had specifically arranged for us to enjoy together. Throughout dinner, I tried to join the conversation, sharing facts about Hawaiian cuisine or asking about tomorrow's plans. Each time, I was interrupted or acknowledged with brief responses, before attention returned to Jake's stories. "You should have seen the waves in Tahiti," Jake was saying, gesturing dramatically. "Makes Hawaiian surf look like a kiddie pool." "Have you really been to Tahiti?" I asked, genuinely curious, but also slightly skeptical. A flash of annoyance crossed his face before he smiled. "Dude, bro, I backpacked through the South Pacific after college." "That's amazing," Mom gushed. "You're so adventurous, Jake." "Not like Marcus," Dad added with a chuckle. "Always planning and researching. Probably knows more about Hawaii from Google than most locals." The table laughed. The comment stung. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment alone. When I returned, they were discussing tomorrow's plans, completely disregarding the private boat tour I had already mentioned several times. "Jake knows this amazing hidden waterfall," Brianna was saying excitedly. "It's not in any guidebooks. We could hike there tomorrow." "That sounds wonderful," Mom agreed. "I actually booked us a private boat tour tomorrow," I interjected. "It includes snorkeling at a secluded reef and lunch by a private chef." It wasn't easy to get reservations. There was an awkward silence. Dad spoke. "That sounds nice, too, son. Maybe we could do Jake's hike in the morning and your boat thing in the afternoon." "The boat tour is all day," I explained, trying to keep frustration from my voice. "It leaves at 9 o'clock and returns around 4 o'clock. "Oh," Brianna said, disappointment evident. "But Jake's waterfall sounds really special. And we can do it anytime," Jake added smoothly. "Your boat tour is probably awesome, too, Marcus. Maybe we can hit the waterfall another day." His words were conciliatory, but his tone suggested he was merely humoring me. Still, I felt a small victory in maintaining our original plans. After dinner, while my family decided to check out the resort's luau performance, I excused myself to confirm details for tomorrow's boat tour. In reality, I needed time alone to process the day and shake off the growing feeling of being an outsider on my own family vacation. Walking along the beach, I called Trevor in Seattle. "How's paradise?" he asked cheerfully. "Beautiful," I replied honestly. "The resort is everything I hoped for." "It's just what?" "Don't tell me. You're working remotely." "No, nothing like that. It's my sister's boyfriend. Everyone seems completely enamored with him, and I'm starting to feel, I don't know, redundant." "On a trip you organized and paid for? That's messed up, man." "Maybe I'm overreacting," I said, watching the moonlight shimmer. "It's only been one day. Trust your gut, Marcus. You're the most level-headed person I know. If something feels off, it probably is." When I returned, I found my family at the outdoor bar, laughing hysterically at something Jake had said. Brianna waved me over. "Marcus, Jake was just telling us about the time he accidentally walked into a women's changing room in Japan. It's hilarious." I smiled politely and joined them. "So, everyone ready for the boat tour tomorrow?" I asked during a lull. "We need to be at the marina by 8:45. "About that," Brianna began, exchanging glances with Jake. My heart sank. I knew exactly what was coming next. The next morning, I woke up early. Despite my reservations, the private boat tour a $2,000 custom experience with a marine biologist guide and gourmet lunch was the excursion I was most looking forward to. The highlight of the trip, I thought. After getting dressed, I headed to my parents' suite. No answer. I tried their phones, no response. Growing concerned, I went to Brianna and Jake's room. Silence. A feeling of dread built in my stomach. I went to the front desk. "Excuse me, I'm trying to locate my family, the Wilsons, in suites 324 and 326. Have you seen them this morning?" The receptionist checked her computer. "I believe they left the resort quite early, sir. Around 6 a.m. left? Did they say where?" "I'm sorry, I don't have that information." Returning to my parents' suite, I used the spare key card. The room was empty. On the desk, a hastily scribbled note in my mother's handwriting. "Marcus, Jake knows a secret trail to an amazing waterfall. We decided to go hiking with him early to beat the heat. Should be back by afternoon. Don't worry about us, Mom." I stared at the note in disbelief. They had knowingly abandoned our plans, an expensive, prepaid excursion I'd organized months in advance, without even the courtesy of telling me to my face. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They had chosen Jake's spontaneous suggestion over my carefully planned activity, without a second thought for my feelings or the money wasted. With shaking hands, I called the tour company. "I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson, but we're fully booked, and cancellations within 24 hours are non-refundable. I would forfeit the entire $2,000. Normally, the money wouldn't have bothered me as much as the principal, but combined with the blatant disregard for my efforts, it felt like salt in an open wound. For the next few hours, I sat alone on my balcony, alternating between calling my family's phones, all went straight to voicemail, and staring at the ocean. Around 11 a.m., a text from Brianna. "Waterfall is amazing. You should have come." No apology. No acknowledgement of the boat tour they'd skipped. Just rubbing in what a great time they were having without me. By the time my family finally returned to the resort at 4:30 p.m., I had been sitting alone in the lobby for hours, my mood vacillating between hurt, anger, and a deep sense of betrayal. They burst through the entrance, laughing, sunburned, animated, a perfect family unit, minus me. Mom spotted me first. "Marcus, there you are? You would not believe the day we had. The waterfall was absolutely magical. Dude, you missed out," Jake added, clapping me on the shoulder as if we were old friends. "Purest water you've ever seen, and we had the whole place to ourselves. I tried calling all of you multiple times," I said quietly, struggling to keep my voice steady. "We had the boat tour today, the one I told everyone about, the one I paid $2,000 for." A brief flash of guilt crossed my father's face. "All right, the boat thing. Well, cell reception isn't great in the jungle. We figured you'd understand." "Understand what?" I asked. "That you all decided to ditch me and the plans we agreed on." "Don't be so dramatic, Marcus." Brianna sighed. "It's not like we ditched you. You could have come with us if you weren't so rigid about following your precious itinerary." "How could I come with you?" I shot back. "When I woke up to an empty resort and a note you all left before 6 o'clock in the morning without telling me." Mom patted my arm condescendingly. "We didn't want to wake you, dear. You worked so hard organizing everything. We thought you might enjoy a morning to sleep in." The casual dismissal of my feelings was infuriating. I took a deep breath, determined not to make a scene in the lobby. "I need to shower before dinner," I said stiffly, turning toward the elevators. "Speaking of dinner," Jake called after me. "I found this awesome seafood shack on the other side of the island. Super authentic, locals only. I made us reservations for 7. I stopped and turned. Slowly. I already made reservations at the resort's Japanese restaurant. I mentioned it yesterday. "Cancel them," Dad suggested with a shrug. "Jake says this place has the best poke on the island. We can try your restaurant another night." Looking at their expectant faces, I realized none of them saw anything wrong with their behavior. In their minds, Jake's spontaneous suggestions trumped my careful planning every time, regardless of the cost, financial or emotional, to me. "Fine," I conceded, too drained to argue. 7 it is. That evening, as we drove to the seafood shack, which turned out to be a touristy restaurant. With inflated prices and mediocre food, I sat silently in the back seat. Jake regaled my family with embellished tales of his waterfall adventure. The rocks were super slippery, but I helped Diana across like it was nothing, he boasted, referring to my mother by her first name with a familiarity that grated on my nerves. He was so careful with me, Mom added adoringly. And when that other hiking group showed up, Dad continued, Jake knew exactly how to find another viewpoint. The kid has a sixth sense for this stuff. It's just experience, Jake said with false modesty. When you've traveled as much as I have, you develop instincts. Throughout dinner, the pattern continued. Every conversation circled back to Jake's apparent expertise on everything from Hawaiian culture to local beers. When I attempted to share an interesting fact about traditional fishing practices, Jake interrupted with, Actually, that's not quite right. My buddy who lives here says. After the main course, while waiting for dessert, Jake raised his beer in a toast to tomorrow's adventure, surfing lessons at McKenna Beach. I know the instructor. He'll give us the local treatment. I set down my fork carefully. I haven't booked any surfing lessons. No worries, bro. I took care of it this afternoon. Called in a favor from my friend. And when were you planning to tell me about this change to our schedule? I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Jake looked surprised. Just didn't I? Thought you'd be happy not having to organize everything for once. Marcus has been working so hard planning this trip, Brianna added, as if defending me rather than dismissing my concerns. It's nice for him to relax and let someone else take charge. Jake's spontaneity is refreshing, Mom said, patting my hand as if I were a child. Your planning is wonderful, dear. But sometimes the best experiences are the unplanned ones. That's right, Dad agreed. You could learn to live a little from Jake. Not everything needs spreadsheets and advanced bookings. Their words cut deep, revealing what they really thought of my efforts. To them, my meticulous planning, my way of showing love and care, was a character flaw. And Jake's haphazard, last-minute suggestions were somehow superior, despite the fact that I was financing this entire vacation. Later that night, as I lay awake in my luxurious suite that suddenly felt cold and empty, I received a text from my mother. Don't forget surfing tomorrow. Jake says to meet in the lobby at 8. Wear sunscreen. Curiosity and suspicion prompted me to check my resort account on my phone. What I discovered sent a wave of fresh anger through me. Jake had been using my room number to charge activities and drinks to my account. Somehow, my family had given him access to the prepaid activities fund I'd established for us, treating him to helicopter tours, premium cocktails, and spa treatments, using the money I had set aside for our family experiences. The betrayal was complete. Not only had they sidelined me emotionally on a trip I had funded, but they were literally using my money to finance Jake's vacation and treat him like an honored guest while I sat alone on the sidelines. As I stared at the ceiling, listening to the distant sound of waves, I came to a painful realization. I had always been an outsider in my own family, valued not for who I was, but for what I could provide. And now that Jake offered excitement and novelty, they didn't even need me for the vacation I was paying for. Something broke inside me. That night, the illusion that I could purchase my family's love and respect through generosity and sacrifice. By morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with hurt, anger, and a painful clarity. As the first light of dawn filtered through my curtains, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I would stop trying to buy my family's approval. I would walk away from this farce of a family vacation and reclaim my self-respect. Instead of joining the surfing excursion Jake had arranged, I took a long walk on the beach. At sunrise, feeling the warm sand between my toes, the gentle Hawaiian breeze against my face. For the first time since arriving in paradise, I actually noticed the beauty surrounding me. Rather than focusing on my family's approval, finding a quiet spot, I sat down and called Trevor. They did what? He exclaimed after I explained. You spent $15,000 on this vacation, and they're ignoring you to hang out with your sister's boyfriend of 3 months, and they gave him access to charge things to your account? That's beyond disrespectful, Marcus. That's exploitation. I know, I sighed. I've always known deep down my relationship with my family was conditional, but this trip made it impossible to ignore. So, what are you going to do? I'm done, I said, surprised by the certainty in my voice. I'm not spending another week being the invisible financier of their vacation with Jake. I'm moving to a different resort and enjoying Hawaii on my own terms. Good for you, man. It's about time you stood up for yourself. After the call, I spent an hour researching other accommodations. I found a smaller, boutique hotel about 20 minutes away. Less luxurious, but excellent reviews for its authentic atmosphere and friendly staff. I booked it immediately, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Back at the resort, I packed my belongings efficiently. Then I headed to the front desk. I'd like to keep my current suite paid through the end of our original booking, I explained to the manager. My family will continue to stay here, but I'll be moving to different accommodations today. Is there a problem with your room, Mr. Wilson? She asked, concerned. No, the resort is wonderful. This is a personal decision. After modifying the reservation, I returned to my room to finish packing. As I zipped my suitcase, a knock at the door. Brianna, still in her swimwear, looking confused and slightly annoyed. Where were you this morning? We waited in the lobby for 20 minutes before heading to the beach without you. I decided not to join the surfing lesson, I replied calmly, continuing to pack. Her eyes widened as she noticed my open suitcase. What are you doing? Are you packing? Yes, I'm moving to a different hotel. What? Why would you do that? Is this because we went to the waterfall yesterday? Are you seriously that petty? Her immediate assumption that I was being childish, rather than considering my feelings might be legitimately hurt, only confirmed I was making the right decision. This isn't about the waterfall, Brianna. It's about the fact that since we arrived, I've been treated like an afterthought on a vacation that I planned and paid for. You've all made it clear. You prefer Jake's company and his spontaneous ideas to spending time with me or following through on plans we agreed to. That's ridiculous, she protested, though her eyes darted away guiltily. We love having you with us. You're just being too sensitive. Am I? You left without me yesterday for an excursion Jake suggested, causing me to forfeit $2,000 on a boat tour you all knew about. Dad told me I should learn to live a little from Jake. And somehow Jake has been charging expenses to my room despite not being authorized on my account. Brianna's cheeks flushed. Mom gave him the room number for emergencies. He probably just got confused. 7 separate charges in 2 days isn't confusion, Brianna. It's taking advantage. So this is about money? I thought you wanted us to enjoy ourselves. You're always saying how you have more than enough. Her response was so disconnected from the real issue, I almost laughed. This has never been about money. It's about respect. It's about being treated like a person with feelings, rather than an ATM with legs. You're ruining this vacation, she accused, tears welling. Jake was so excited about all the plans he made for us this week. Plans he made using my money. You mean? On a trip I organized and paid for. You're being so selfish right now, she snapped, wiping away tears. I took a deep breath, refusing to be manipulated. I've paid for your suite through the end of our original booking. You, Mom, Dad, and Jake can continue enjoying the resort. I'll be staying elsewhere. And one more thing. I've canceled the remaining prepaid activities except for your accommodation. If Jake wants to plan excursions, he can pay for them himself. Her mouth fell open in shock. You can't do that. Actually, I can. They were booked under my name with my credit card. Just then, my parents appeared in the doorway behind Brianna, clearly having returned from the beach. What's going on? Mom asked, looking between us. Brianna, why are you crying? Marcus is leaving, she blurted out. He's moving to another hotel and canceled all our activities because he's jealous of Jake. Dad's expression hardened. Is this true, Marcus? I met his gaze steadily. I'm moving to another hotel, yes. And I've canceled the prepaid activities I arranged, except for your rooms, which are covered until the end of our stay. But why? Because of one missed boat tour, Mom asked incredulously. Because I'm tired of being taken for granted, I replied honestly. I came here hoping to reconnect with my family, but instead I've been repeatedly pushed aside in favor of someone you've known for 3 months. I've tried to be understanding, but when Dad suggested I should learn to live from Jake while using my money to fund his ideas. I realized this isn't a healthy dynamic for any of us. We didn't mean to make you feel left out, Mom insisted, though her tone lacked conviction. Jake just has so much energy and great ideas. Ideas that cost me money when you skip the activities I've already paid for, I pointed out. Ideas that exclude me from family experiences. Ideas that none of you bothered to consult me about despite the fact that I organized this entire vacation. You're overreacting, Dad said dismissively. Family vacations always have some friction. There's no need to storm off like this. I'm not storming off. I'm making a conscious decision to remove myself from a situation that's making me unhappy. I've paid for your accommodations through the end of the week as planned. You're welcome to continue enjoying the resort. And what about all the activities we had planned? Mom asked. The luau tomorrow night? The helicopter tour Jake arranged. The helicopter tour Jake charged to my account, you mean? Those have been canceled. You're free to rebook them yourselves. Dad's face reddened with anger. This is incredibly immature, Marcus. We raised you better than this. The irony of his statement was not lost on me. You raised me to be responsible and consider others. I'm not seeing much of that consideration being extended to me right now. After everything you've done for us, Mom began, her voice trembling. How could you ruin this family vacation? That's exactly it, I said quietly. After everything I've done, not just this vacation, but years of financial support and constant effort to maintain our relationship, I still don't feel like a valued member of this family. I'm just the checkbook. I finished packing in silence while they watched, a mixture of anger, confusion, and dawning realization on their faces. Before leaving, I placed a note on the desk detailing exactly what remained covered and what had been canceled. I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay, I said sincerely. I need some time to think about our relationship moving forward. As I walked out the door with my suitcase, Brianna called after me. So that's it. You're just abandoning us. I turned back one last time. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm setting a boundary. There's a difference. Checking into my new hotel 30 minutes later felt like shedding a heavy backpack after a long hike. The boutique property was charming, Polynesian-inspired, with a small but pristine pool overlooking a secluded beach. My room was simple but comfortable, with a private lanai surrounded by flowering plumeria trees. As I unpacked, my phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from my family. Most were guilt-laden messages from Mom. I can't believe you would do this to us. And angry accusations from Brianna. Jake says you're just jealous of him. My father left a voicemail that started with criticism but ended with a grudging acknowledgement. Maybe we did take your generosity for granted, but this isn't the way to handle it. I also received a message from my Aunt Elaine. Diana called me in tears. What's happening in Hawaii? She says you abandoned them at the resort. Rather than engaging with the emotional manipulation, I turned off my phone and headed to the hotel's open-air bar. Sitting on a stool made from a carved coconut trunk, I ordered a Mai Tai and finally allowed myself to relax. The bartender, a friendly local woman named Leilani, noticed my pensive mood. First time in Hawaii? She asked. Yes, I replied, with a small smile. Though not quite the vacation I expected. The best experiences often aren't what we expect, she said wisely. Sometimes you have to let go of your plans to find what you really need. As the sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, I sipped my drink and felt truly at peace for the first time since arriving. A group of locals and tourists had gathered nearby, their laughter drifting over on the warm evening breeze. One woman, in particular, caught my eye. She had curly brown hair and was animatedly describing something to her friends. When she glanced my way and smiled, I raised my glass in a small toast to new beginnings, free from the weight of unrealistic expectations and unbalanced relationships. She waved me over. I'm Amelia, she said, extending her hand. We're celebrating my first year, working as a marine biologist here. Want to join us? I'd love to, I replied, a genuine smile spreading across my face. I'm Marcus, and I'm celebrating my first day of real freedom. The morning after moving to my new hotel, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. Without the pressure of managing my family's expectations or constantly seeking their approval, I was free to experience Hawaii on my own terms. I started my day with breakfast at a local cafe, fresh fruit and Kona coffee on a patio overlooking the ocean. With no rigid itinerary, I decided to join a group snorkeling tour. This wasn't some exclusive private affair. It was a small operation run by a native Hawaiian couple who'd been taking visitors to their favorite spots for 20 years. "First time in Maui?" asked the guide, Cone, as he helped me adjust my mask. "Yes," I replied honestly, "and I'm finally getting to enjoy it." The group was diverse: a retired couple, a father and son, two college friends, and Amelia, the marine biologist I'd met the previous evening. "Marcus, I didn't expect to see you here," she said with a warm smile. "I thought you might be nursing a hangover after all those Mai Tais." I laughed, feeling my cheeks warm. I paced myself. Besides, I didn't want to waste a beautiful day in paradise. During the 3-hour tour, Cone and his wife shared their deep knowledge of the reef and Hawaiian culture. They showed us hidden underwater caves and introduced us to resident sea turtles they'd named swimming alongside these gentle creatures while sunlight filtered through the crystal-clear water was magical, a far cry from the performative vacation experiences I had originally planned. Throughout the excursion, Amelia shared fascinating additional details, her passion for ocean conservation evident in every word. By the time we returned to shore, I'd made genuine connections with several people. "A bunch of us are going to try a surfing lesson tomorrow morning with Cone's brother," Amelia mentioned. "You should join us." "I'd like that," I replied, surprised by how easy it felt to accept a spontaneous invitation without overthinking it. As I walked back to my hotel, my phone buzzed. I'd turned it back on that morning, but had been too engaged to check it. Multiple missed calls and texts from my family, their tone evolving from angry to desperate as they realized the implications of my departure. From Mom, "The resort says we can't confirm our helicopter tour because the original booking was canceled. Please call them and fix this." From Brianna, "Jake tried to arrange a sunset cruise, but they want a $500 deposit. Can you call them and put it on your card? We'll pay you back." From Dad, "Son, we need to talk about this. The activities desk says all our excursions have been removed from their system." The most revealing message came from my Aunt Elaine, who had always been more perceptive. "Just spoke to your mother again. Sounds like they're experiencing the natural consequences of taking advantage of your generosity. Jake apparently isn't so charming now that he can't spend your money freely. Call me when you can." Rather than responding immediately, I decided to enjoy a late lunch at a small restaurant Cone had recommended, savoring freshly caught mahi-mahi while watching surfers ride the afternoon waves. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I was making choices based solely on my own preferences, without calculating how they would be received by others. That evening, I received a call from Natalie, another friend from Seattle, who'd heard about the situation from Trevor. "I always thought your family took advantage of you," she said bluntly. "Remember when your sister expected you to fly home for that weekend art show of hers and got upset when you couldn't drop everything at a moment's notice?" "I do," I admitted. I ended up sending her an expensive gift to make up for not being there, even though she only gave me 3 days' notice. "And now you're finally setting boundaries. I'm proud of you, Marcus. How does it feel?" "Terrifying." I laughed, but also right. I keep expecting to feel guilty, but mostly I just feel free. Later that night, I met Amelia and some of her friends for dinner at a local restaurant hidden away from the tourist areas. We sat at long communal tables, sharing food and stories as if we'd known each other for years. "So what brought you to Hawaii alone?" Amelia asked as we shared a dessert of hapia pudding. I gave her the condensed version of my family situation, expecting sympathy or awkwardness. Instead, she nodded thoughtfully. "My older brother was the family ATM for years," she said, "always trying to buy our parents' approval with expensive gifts and bailing everyone out. It took a heart attack scare at 34 for him to realize no amount of money could make them treat him with respect. Is he okay now?" "Better than okay. Once he stopped trying to please everyone, he figured out what actually made him happy. Now he runs a small dive shop in Florida, has a great partner, and only deals with family on his own terms." Her story gave me hope. I wasn't overreacting. Setting boundaries was both necessary and potentially life-changing. The next morning, I received an unexpected call from my Aunt Elaine. "Your mother called me." Crying again, she began without preamble. "But this time, it wasn't about you abandoning them. It was about Jake." "What happened?" I asked, genuinely curious. Apparently, when Jake realized all the prepaid activities were canceled, he threw quite a tantrum. Started complaining about false advertising and how he was promised a luxury vacation. When your father suggested they could pay for some activities themselves, Jake made a comment about not wasting his money on overpriced tourist traps and said he would have never come if he'd known he'd have to pay for anything. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. How did Brianna take that? Not well. According to your mother, they had a huge fight last night. Brianna defended Jake at first, but then he made some comment about how her rich brother should have covered everything if he really cared about family. That's when she finally saw what you've been dealing with. And Mom and Dad, they're embarrassed. Your father tried to book that helicopter tour Jake had been talking up, only to discover it costs $1,200 per person. He told your mother he had no idea how expensive these activities were and gained a new appreciation for how much you'd invested in this trip. While I felt validated, I took no joy in their discomfort. I never wanted to ruin their vacation, I said. Honestly, I just couldn't keep being the invisible sponsor. They ruined it themselves, Marcus. And maybe this wake-up call is exactly what they needed. After ending the call with my aunt, I joined Amelia and the others for the surfing lesson we had planned. Despite numerous wipeouts and swallowing more seawater than I care to admit, it was one of the most exhilarating experiences of my life. The pure joy of finally catching a wave and riding it too. Sure, even for just a few seconds, was worth every failed attempt. That afternoon, I received a text from my father that surprised me with its humility. "We underestimated what you put into this trip, both financially and emotionally. Your mother and I would like to talk when you're ready. No pressure." Later, Amelia invited me to join her for a sunset hike. As we climbed the trail, she shared stories about her work protecting coral reefs and local community efforts to preserve Hawaiian culture. At the summit, watching the sun sink into the Pacific in a blaze of gold and crimson, I realized I was genuinely happy for the first time in recent memory. Not the conditional happiness that came from momentary family approval, but a deeper contentment born of authentic connection and self-respect. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Amelia said softly, her curls dancing in the gentle breeze. "Perfect," I agreed. And I wasn't just talking about the sunset. That evening, over dinner, I received a series of increasingly humble texts from Brianna. "Jake and I broke up. He showed his true colors when the free luxury stuff disappeared. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was so caught up in trying to impress Jake that I didn't see how disrespectful we were being. Can we talk tomorrow, please?" The vindication I felt was tempered by genuine compassion for my sister. Despite everything, I didn't want her to be hurt. I replied, simply, "I'm free for breakfast at 9 o'clock. The cafe at my hotel makes amazing macadamia nut pancakes." As I fell asleep that night, in my modest but comfortable room, I reflected on how dramatically my vacation had transformed. What began as an expensive attempt to buy family connection had become a priceless lesson in self-worth and authentic joy. For the first time, I was experiencing Hawaii not as a costly backdrop for family approval, but as a beautiful place where I was learning to be true to myself. And I had a feeling the real transformation was just beginning. On my 7th day in Hawaii, I sat at a beachfront table at my hotel's cafe, watching the morning sun sparkle on the waves, waiting for Brianna. Part of me wanted to maintain the peaceful independence I'd discovered, while another part hoped for genuine reconciliation. When Brianna arrived, I barely recognized her. Gone was the confident, slightly entitled younger sister I'd known. She looked smaller, her usual perfect appearance replaced by a simple sundress, minimal makeup, and slightly reddened eyes suggesting recent tears. "Marcus," she said hesitantly, hovering by the table. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." I stood, and after a moment's hesitation, gave her a brief hug. "The pancakes here really are worth trying," I said, gesturing to the empty chair. After ordering, we sat in awkward silence until Brianna finally spoke. I don't even know where to begin, she admitted, fidgeting. I was horrible to you. You were caught up in Jake's influence, I offered, surprising myself with my generosity. She shook her head firmly. That's no excuse. Jake may have been the catalyst, but the way I treated you, the way we all treated you, has been a pattern for years. We've taken your generosity for granted and made you feel like an outsider in your own family. I see that clearly now. Her self-awareness caught me off guard. What happened with Jake? I asked gently. After you left and all the prepaid activities disappeared, he completely changed. Started complaining about everything. The resort was too commercialized, the restaurants tourist traps. Nothing lived up to his authentic travel experiences. She made air quotes around authentic with a bitter smile. The final straw came when Dad suggested we could pay for some activities ourselves. Jake actually laughed and said he wouldn't waste his money on overpriced excursions. Then he looked at me and said, I thought your brother was loaded in covering everything. If I'd known this was a pay-your-own-way trip, I would have suggested Cancun instead. Way cheaper for the same beaches. Ouch, I winced. Yeah. In that moment, I saw exactly what you'd been seeing all along. He was using me to access a luxury vacation on someone else's dime. All his amazing stories and adventurous ideas were just talk. When it came to actually investing in experiences, he wasn't willing to spend $1. Our food arrived, pausing the conversation. After a few bites, Brianna continued. We had a huge fight after that. I defended you, and he accused me of choosing my ATM brother over him. That's when I told him to pack his bags. He's flying back to Chicago today. I'm sorry it ended that way, I said sincerely. Despite everything, I know you cared about him. I thought I did, she acknowledged. But I think I was more in love with the exciting, spontaneous image he projected than the actual person. Real Jake turned out to be selfish and entitled, not so different from how I've been acting, honestly. Her self-reflection impressed me. That's a lot of personal insight to gain in just a few days. Mom and Dad have been doing some soul-searching, too, she added. Dad actually calculated how much this trip must have cost you. When he realized the total, he was shocked. He had no idea. You'd invested so much, not just money, but time and thought into planning everything. It was never about the money, I explained, wanting her to understand. It was about feeling valued as a person, not just as a provider. I get that now, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. And I'm truly sorry, Marcus, not just for this trip, but for years of taking you for granted. You've always been there for me, helping with college, supporting my art career, being my emergency contact for everything. And I've never properly acknowledged or reciprocated that support. Her genuine remorse touched me deeply. Thank you for saying that. Mom and Dad would like to see you, too, if you're willing. They're pretty embarrassed about how everything unfolded, but they really want to make things right. I considered this request carefully. I think I'd like that, but not quite yet. I'm finally enjoying Hawaii on my own terms, and I need a little more time. I understand completely, she assured me. They'll be ready whenever you are. After breakfast, Brianna and I walked along the beach, our conversation shifting to my experiences since leaving the resort. I told her about the authentic local spots I'd discovered, the interesting people I'd met, and the surprising joy I'd found in unplanned adventures. You seem different, she observed as we paused to watch a group of sea turtles. More relaxed. Happier. I feel different, I admitted. For the first time in my adult life, I'm making choices based solely on what I want, not what will please others or prove my worth. And that includes this Amelia person? She asked with a knowing smile. I felt my cheeks warm. We've been spending time together, yes. She's brilliant and passionate about marine conservation. Actually, she's giving a public talk at the Conservation Center this afternoon about coral reef protection. Would you like to come? I'd love to, Brianna said sincerely. And Marcus, I promise I'll actually listen and not try to make it about me this time. 2 days later, I agreed to meet my parents for dinner at a neutral location, a mid-range restaurant halfway between our respective accommodations. They arrived early, waiting nervously. Marcus, Mom said, standing quickly. She looked like she wanted to hug me, but wasn't sure. I made the decision for her, stepping forward to embrace both my parents briefly. "You look good, son," Dad said as we sat down. "Alan, life agrees with you." "It does," I confirmed, though not in the way I originally expected. There was an awkward pause before Mom spoke again. "We owe you an apology." "Several, actually. We've been talking a lot these past few days," Dad continued, "about patterns in our family that have been unfair to you. You've always been the responsible one, the one we could count on. Somewhere along the way, we started taking that for granted. We expected you to always understand, always accommodate, always support, without giving you the same consideration in return." Mom added, her voice thick with emotion. "It wasn't right, and we're truly sorry." Their sincere apology meant more than I had expected. "Thank you for acknowledging that. Brianna told us you've made some new friends here," Dad said, trying to move the conversation to more comfortable territory. I smiled, "including a marine biologist named Amelia, who's been showing me parts of the island most tourists never see. She sounds lovely," Mom said warmly. "We'd like to hear more about her and everything else you've been experiencing." To my surprise, my parents spent the rest of dinner genuinely listening as I shared stories about my adventures. They asked thoughtful questions and expressed real interest, without once comparing them to Jake's supposed expertise or suggesting I should have done things differently. When the check came, Dad reached for it immediately. "This one's on us," he said firmly. "It's a tiny step toward recognizing everything you've contributed." As we parted that evening, Mom hugged me tightly. "We'd love to spend some time with you before the trip ends if you're willing, but we'll understand if you need more space. Maybe a beach day tomorrow?" I suggested, finding that I genuinely wanted to rebuild our connection now that the dynamics were shifting. Nothing elaborate, just relaxing together. The relief and joy on their faces told me this was the right decision. The final days of our Hawaiian vacation unfolded in ways I never could have planned, but were more meaningful than anything I had originally envisioned. I divided my time between solo adventures, outings with Amelia and her friends, and more balanced interactions with my family. Brianna and I went kayaking one morning and had the most honest conversation of our adult lives, acknowledging the competitive dynamics that had shaped our relationship and committing to a more supportive sibling bond moving forward. My parents joined Amelia and me for a traditional Hawaiian cooking class, where we laughed together as we failed spectacularly at folding taro leaves for laulau. On our last evening in Hawaii, I hosted a small dinner at my hotel's restaurant, inviting both my family and the new friends I'd made. Watching Amelia describe her coral restoration project to my fascinated parents, my father genuinely engaged in the conversation rather than dominating it, and Brianna showing sincere interest in both our lives, I felt a sense of alignment I'd never experienced before. My family relationships were finally shifting toward mutual respect rather than one-sided giving. Before we parted at the airport for our separate flights, my parents and Brianna back to Chicago, me to Seattle, Dad pulled me aside. "This trip didn't go as planned," he acknowledged. "But I think we all learned something more valuable than we would have from a perfect vacation. Your mother and I are committed to changing how we relate to you, son. It won't happen overnight, but we're working on it. That's all I can ask," I replied honestly. When I returned to Seattle, I brought back more than just a tan and souvenirs. I carried a new understanding of self-worth that transformed how I approached both work and personal relationships. I declined unnecessary overtime projects, started a weekly hiking group with Trevor and other friends, and maintained my newfound ability to enjoy unplanned experiences. Amelia and I continued our connection long distance with daily texts and weekly video calls. 2 months after returning home, I flew back to Hawaii for a long weekend to see her, and our relationship deepened further. We began discussing the possibility of me relocating to Hawaii or her finding research opportunities in the Pacific Northwest. My relationship with my family also evolved. Sunday video calls became more reciprocal, with my parents showing genuine interest in my life rather than just expecting updates on theirs. When Brianna landed her first major graphic design contract, she insisted on flying to Seattle to celebrate with me, paying for her own ticket and treating me to dinner for a change. At Thanksgiving, when I returned to Chicago, the dynamic shift was noticeable to everyone. My Aunt Elaine pulled me aside during dessert. "Whatever happened in Hawaii changed things for the better," she observed. "I haven't seen your parents this respectful of your boundaries, well, ever." It wasn't easy, I admitted. But sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most necessary changes. 6 months after the fateful Hawaiian vacation, Amelia visited Seattle for 2 weeks, staying in my apartment and exploring the possibility of transferring to a marine research center in the area. My family flew out for a weekend during her stay, eager to spend more time with the woman who had become so important to me. Watching my mother and Amelia discuss ocean conservation over dinner, my father genuinely engaged in the conversation rather than dominating it, and Brianna, showing sincere interest in both our lives. I reflected on the painful but necessary journey that had brought us here. The $15,000 I spent on that Hawaiian vacation turned out to be the best investment I ever made. Not because of the luxury experiences it purchased, but because it forced a reckoning that transformed our family dynamic. By walking away from people who didn't value me, I paradoxically created the space for genuine connection to grow. The most profound lesson I learned wasn't about family specifically, but about self-worth. Real love, whether from family, friends, or partners, doesn't need to be purchased with grand gestures or financial support. Real love is based on mutual respect, reciprocity, and valuing each other for who we are, not what we can provide. If you're struggling with similar dynamics in your relationships, remember that sometimes the kindest thing you can do, both for yourself and the people taking you for granted, is to step back and allow natural consequences to unfold. It's only when the imbalance is exposed that healing can truly begin. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, your worth isn't determined by what you give, but by who you are.